Okay, so these are the shelves I'm going to be using. You might have seen these in the other video about the sawtooth shelving strip. I made these shelves fitted into the cabinet. So, because these are fitted into the cabinet now, I've decided to add the oak on the front. I'm going to have to rip these down 20mm. So the thickness that I want the visible oak to be, I'm just going to rip off the front of the shelf. So I've set this groove bit up. It's about a quarter groove, so it wants to be roughly a third of the material, and I'm just going to run it in this piece of plywood and then measure each side and get it so it sits in the centre nicely, and run that through all the fronts of the shelves about 8mm deep. Okay, so for the oak, I've got some American white. Use American white generally for interior work, namely because it's a fair bit cheaper. It's not quite as stable as a European oak in an exterior application. It's definitely not as durable, but there's not an awful lot in an interior. You lack some of the colour that a European oak would have, so it's more sort of brown colour to a European oak, and a white oak has got a lighter sort of surface to it. But if you apply any sort of stain or finish to it, you'd struggle to tell the difference. So I'm just going to cut it slightly longer than the shelves themselves. So this is one of them joyous moments that I was talking about in the workshop tour video. So if I had a circular saw to rip this down, I'm looking for 18mm thick finished parts. I'm going to struggle to get 6 out of that, so I need 6 pieces. Whereas on the bandsaw, I can plane an edge, plane the whole surface of the whole board, plane one edge, and then take a nice accurate sliver at sort of 19mm cut. And I'll easily get 6 pieces out of this board with no worries at all. So it saved me now having to cut another length of board to get that extra piece out. So it's why I love having the bandsaw and a narrow kerf cut on it. Sorry about the extractor in the background, but when you're planing up any sort of timber that's uneven and not flat for a start, you just want to, after your first pass is really important that you keep it flat as it passes over the planer, and you don't let it follow any variations in the board. So you don't want to be applying pressure here when you start, and then applying pressure at this end of the board when you finish, as it will follow the twist in the board. So it's important you keep it flat for that first pass, and then have a look at it on the other side and see where it's taking the material. So this corner on this side of the board, and over here it's on this bit here. So as I turn that back over, they're my hand placements for the next pass. So that's where you want to be putting your weight, because you definitely know that it's going to contact the bend surface. You want to keep your weight there as it comes through. Then as you pass it forward, you know this patch here has been planed, and it's the next point that's touching, so you're keeping your weight in them places. It stops you sort of following the natural twist in the board. As you put your weight down, it kick the board up and you end up with a twisted board. Okay, so I finished them the same thickness as the shelves, so the 18mm plywood. It's actually about 18.2mm, so you just want to check that before you go and thickness these down, and physically check it in more than one point around the shelves, because you can get a fair bit of variation in the material of the plywood itself. So I'm just going to go through these and pick out the most featured parts, or if there's any sort of breakout like that on that knot there, I'm going to put that towards the back, so hopefully that'll get rebated out and disappear. So nice featured bits at the front is what I'm after, so we've got some nice looking bits of oak. So I've chucked the rebater in here, and I'm just going to run it through the machine, the oak, and turn it over and run it back through again. The most accurate way of doing it would be to have two rebate blocks and put spacers between the two, but for the purposes of the shelf and the fact we've set it dead in the middle, I'm just going to rely on the accuracy of the thickness of this material coming off the thicknesser. So if you've got a variation in your thickness and you use this method, you're going to see a difference in the thickness of the tongue as it goes through this machine, and that's going to make it tight in some places and loose in others. So I'm just going to set the depth of the cut in this direction, just slightly less than the groove depth, about 1 mil less, so it's about 7.5mm in groove, so I'm going to go about 6.5mm on this. Set it, I want to do about 5.5 tall, so I'm going to set it to 5, make a test cut, and then adjust slowly up to my mark. Okay, so there we go. That's how it's going to finish. See, there's about 1 mil gap there in the tongue, and it's a bit gappy along this edge on the back here. But the reason I've left that in there is so that when this is painted and finished, I can run this over or past the spindle moulder cutter with a 90-degree sort of rebate cutter in it, and get a really nice, clean, sharp front edge to that painted shelf. And then the oak will sit back and have an absolutely perfect line. If you just go away and paint this now, by the time they've sort of de-nibbed this surface and painted it 2-3 times to get a finish, this edge on the painted surface is going to get a slight round to it, and you're going to notice a bit of a bump there between the two surfaces. So if you finish it and then just plane that back, it should give you a nice clean, sharp line to work to. Okay, so while we're here, I'm just going to check the width of the shelf, make sure that it's not too big to fit in the cabinet. I wanted 482 finish, and we're currently at 483. So by the time I've took that last cut off with the to clean the edge of that painted shelf up, it should be about right. As an additional feature on these shelves, normally I'd just leave them square. I'm just going to run a moulding in from both sides, so I get like a double bead or a reed feature in that front edge. This is quite a nice cutter actually, because if you run it from all 4 sides, you get like a round corner bead, but just in this instance I'm going to keep the top nice and flush with the bead cutter like that in profile. Okay, so that's how it's going to look when it's all together. Remember, we're just going to plane the edge off the shelf. So let's get some paint and some finish on these bits and glue it together. Ta-da! Okay, so I've painted these, hand painted, because it gives a nicer finish for this type of cabinet. And I've put a hard wax oil on the oak for the front. So everything's finished as I want it to be in the cabinet. So if you put the two pieces together, you can see if you just glued and clamped them now, we've not got a great line along this front edge here where the paint finishes. So I'm going to get rid of that by just trimming that back on the spindle moulder. You could use a planer, but be wary, it's going to wreck your blades using plywood. So I'm just going to set the rebater up that's got carbide cutters and just use it a bit like a planer, so it's going to take a sort of a 1/2 mm cut off the front edge of the shelf and leave a nice, perfectly smooth finish. So just going to put a tiny bead in the groove of PU glue, and it's the first time I've done this. I've not pre-finished two sets and glued them together like this before, but hoping I'm not going to get too much glue squeeze on the face, and I think I'll just trim it off if I do. Gluing two back to back, so it uses the two solid pieces of plywood to keep that front edge nice and square. If you've only got wooden shelf that you're doing, then just get another piece of solid timber or plywood or something to keep that front edge clamped nice and squarely. If you just use individual clamps along the length of the piece, you'll see it wander, so it'll be tight where the clamp is, and then there'll be a gap, and then it'll be tight where the next clamp is. There we go, they've glued up quite nicely. I'll let the glue go off, and if any glue squeeze comes through, I'll trim that off with a sharp blade. I'll just let it poke through. Try not to touch it while it's wet, because you'll smear it onto the surfaces, and hopefully that'll make it easy to trim off. And then we're about done. Okay, and now for the finished product in the office project that I've been working on. Pretty pleased with how the lipping turned out. It's definitely added a lot of character to the cupboard that otherwise wouldn't have been there with just having a plain white painted shelves. So let me know what you think about it, and whether you fancy having a go and doing something similar in one of your projects.